He's James Tavernier, makes defenders fear, running down the wing, rolling down the wing. I'm never quite sure because although I can very much hear the Rangers sing, the lyrics of that particular song aren't the most memorable. The beat's not the most banging. And I think that unfortunately sums up the attitude towards the subject matter of that particular Ibrox ditty. Your captain, my captain, the Rangers captain, and my choice as Rangers player of 2022-2023 season, James Tavernier. It's like half Rangers support love him, half of us hate him. The truth is closer to 60 to 70% of the Rangers support is too quietly sensible to get involved in such extremist nonsense. But I am one of the loudmouths who think he is a deserving Hall of Fame inductee. He's one of the most important figures in the history of our club, and I'm always just plainly delighted when he's on the team sheet, because anything I think we're going to achieve in this era is not going to be achieved without James Tavernier. But I'm going to leave the legacy argument to the second half of this week in a 10-minute video. Right now, I'll justify why he was my player of the season, 2022-2023. That's a pedantic but important distinction for me anyway. This is in the last video. I was complaining about how goals of the season are chosen. In this one, I'm going to go on about Rangers picked him as a Player of the Year in this wee award ceremony on the 21st of May at New Edmiston House. Very much an in-house award ceremony, very, very low-key, because I don't know if anybody told you, Rangers didn't actually win anything last season, but James Tavernier got chosen as Player of the Year, and if it was Player of the calendar year, 2023, that would probably go to Todd Cantwell. When Todd arrived in January, he brought such a kind of injection of energy and optimism. He actually reminded me of that character, I can't remember the character's name or the actor's name, in the Shawshank Redemption, who turns up kind of halfway through the film. He's a young prisoner, he's kind of good looking, he's got the Elvis hairdo. He's basically bringing rock and roll to the tired old lifers in the joint, but he's got an alibi for the Tim Robbins character, so the crooked governor shoots him. Just realised you might not have seen the Shawshank Redemption, but I didn't say if he gets fatally shot or not. And the most important thing is I'm talking about Todd Cantwell. His blonde hair and his pink or blue ribbons and his goals and his showboating, his aggression, his long range passing, his short range interplay. Todd Cantwell just lifted the tired old lags, season ticket holders that we are at Ibrox after the depravity and the brutality and the deprivation of any kind of optimism in the first half, the pre-Christmas half of that season just passed. And if he continues in that vein, Todd Cantwell, into next season, he'll definitely be the player of 2023, but it's all about the season. And James Tavernier was there from the start. Now, a lot of you are thinking, yeah, that's why I don't like him, because when we were crap, James Tavernier was playing. But the fact that he played more games than anybody else this season, 55 games in a season ravaged, characterised by massive injuries right across our first team squad, to me, that's a massive credit to James Tavernier, that he clearly injured at times as well. And again, that's a criticism. He was playing poorly, but no, he's turning up. He's going through the pain barrier to make sure he does the captain's part. Not only that, he finished top scorer. This is the third season in a row where James Tavernier has been at least joint top scorer, as he is with Antonio Cholak this season, across all competitions. He's a top scorer in the league. A captain, yeah, but also a right back. The guy's a defender. And the goals he's scoring, still managing to be really significant. First goal in Europe this season, a really important one as well. He had to get that goal against USG to start the comeback. First time Rangers have ever come back from a 2-goal first leg deficit, because we had to get into that group stage of the Champions League. When we did, it was an absolute nightmare. We only scored 2 goals, but Tav got one of them. He scored our first and last goal in Europe this season. The manager has to go because the Champions League group stage was so record-breakingly bad for Rangers. You get 3 games to save himself, 3 league games. In between, the middle one's a wee kind of boring 1-0 win over Hearts midweek at Ibrox. But the two games against the two Saints, we lose 2-1 up at Perth to St Johnstone. We draw 1 each with St Mirren at Paisley. No good enough. Gio has to go, but it's Tav getting the 1 goal in each of those away trips. A penalty in Paisley to stop us losing the game. And up at Perth, he's hitting one from open play, from outside the box. Goalie doesn't do too well for St Johnstone, but in it goes, just to prove that Tav does he just score penalties, and then never mind the assists. He's put the ball in John Souttar's head for that goal in the recent 3-0 win against Celtic. I know Tav gets criticised defensively, and he's very much part of that kind of car crash first goal we lost to Celtic in the 2 each draw in January. Michael Beale's first Old Firm derby. as outright manager. But it was a cavalcade of mistakes in that game, a cornucopia, a catalogue of errors. So many different players were to blame for that goal, and then across the whole season in the Old Firm games, you had like our first choice goalkeeper, John McLaughlin, kicking the ball straight to a Celtic player, David Turnbull, to walk it into our net to make it 4-0 at Parkhead in the first Old Firm game this season. You had John Souttar just coming back from injury himself, playing a short ball back to Alan McGregor, our second choice as first choice goalkeeper in that season. Griggs hasn't been able to get off his line for 2 years, so Celtic walked that one into the net. Ben Davies, our other centre half, plays a Celtic player straight through on our goal for like the second goal Celtic scored that day. Tav was at fault at various points throughout the season, but he was far from the most culpable player at Ibrox this season. As I say, if that's enough to win him the award, then so be it. But he's in that very same game, that second trip to Parkhead, he's scoring his 99th and his 100th goal for Rangers at the home of our most hated rivals, one into each end. One of them, the first one being a world-class free kick, dead ball outside the box, pinging off the underside of Joe Hart's crossbar. The second being a header at the back post. He scores all sorts of goals to have. 2 free kicks from outside the box in 2 separate games, 6 months apart, against Livingston at Almondvale, into the same net, past the same goalkeeper. Absolute worldies. Does the same at Easter Road. He scores a free kick from outside the box at Easter Road into the very same net against the very same opposition. On his 400th appearance for the club is when he scored in his first appearance for the club back at Easter Road in the Challenge Cup, just after being signed by Mark Warburton in 2015. Congratulations, Mark Warburton, part of the West Ham backroom staff, and the Hammers won the Europa League the other night. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I loved Warbs. The club was just too big for him, so it was nice to see him getting a wee bit of joy the other night, much deserved. James Tavernier is a bit of a legend for me. He's no my captain. He's no a Rangers captain. You hear a lot of players, a lot of people saying, a lot of fans saying. I think a lot of that he's getting it quite tight in the last week in particular, Tav, because the Celtic captain has lifted all 3 domestic trophies this season. But even Ange Postecoglou said after our League Cup final loss to Celtic, I saw him saying on the television that Callum McGregor, the Celtic captain, wasn't a shouter, wasn't a ranter and raver. He led by example, a quiet guy who led by example. Tav's the same. Now, we're not saying he's not a John Gregg type, but no, who is a John Gregg type? But the one thing I would say is Eric Caldo, John Gregg, Barry Ferguson, James Tavernier, the only Rangers captains in our history to lead us to European finals. He's in some great company there, Tav, and I don't think either any of those other 3 led Rangers to a European final the way Tav did, getting 7 goals in that post-Christmas period, that run to Seville. He scored the first goal in every leg we played at Ibrox. He scored the first goal of that whole post-Christmas run. They got the ball rolling in Dortmund when we beat the tournament favourites in the Westfalen. We gave them a proper doing. It really injected that whole run with the belief and the kind of magic, the momentum that was required to take us all the way to a European final, in which he stood up and took the first penalty of the shootout. Like a captain, like a leader, put it away like a legend. It's hardly his fault that Aaron Ramsey suddenly forgot how to take penalty kicks. John Gregg, people unfairly holding him up as a comparison for Tav when John Gregg is the greatest Ranger of all time. And yet John Gregg too won a treble in the mid-60s, and then he was captain. We lifted the Scottish Cup in 1966. 4.5 years before the club won another major trophy, John Gregg happened to be injured for that one, so it was 6 years before John Gregg lifted another trophy, and that was the Cup Winners' Cup, and who's taken us closer to being a second Rangers captain to lift a European trophy than James Tavernier. And the whole thing, the club were going through something horrendous at that time. The Ibrox disaster, people actually died in that. I would never compare that to what we went through in 2012. But Celtic had just won the European Cup as well, and there was a kind of whole change in the Old Firm dynamic. I think it really took Rangers 20 years to properly recover from that, and when Souness arrived and we started winning serious numbers of league titles. And I think James Tavernier is in a similar situation, and yet he's won a league title and won a Scottish Cup, being the captain for those in the 6 years that he's been here so far, as well as getting us to the cusp of major glory in that European final. It's only Celtic that are in the way. James Tavernier started the fight back this season, I think, by making sure we went from 4-0 loss at Parkhead to a 3-2 loss at Parkhead. He's going to win trebles. I hope the first of them is next season. James Tavernier, my player of the season.